There's this young sister that's going to speak about the mistake of the black community just having this integration. Now, we know that at one point in time in America, there was segregation. And segregation, why it was an issue, not because we couldn't do good on our own, but in the segregation, they made sure they have all the resources and black folks have none. Understand? And what they was fighting for was actually more access to those resources. Not really, can you live in a neighborhood with them in it? But I want you to watch this young sister's realization of just as she look around in the black community and why she feel that was a big failure of our community. But let's roll that.
I'm going to say this, and I don't care if you agree with me or not, but we should have never integrated. We shouldn't have listened to Martin with his dream. And a lot of people might not understand what I'm saying. I don't even care at this point. We should have never integrated with them. Before we even got to this point, we was thriving before that. We was thriving. Like literally, we understood the value in keeping our dollar within our community, investing into our own banks, schools, hospitals, food, clothes, all of that. All of that. And when we decided to integrate with these white folks and their culture and their way of living, their education, their medicine, their culture, their everything. Now we having identity problems with ourselves because we don't even know what our culture is. And then when you do speak up, like people like me or other beings that speak up about our culture, you want to get mad and be like, that's not of our culture. What do you know? What do you really know? Let's start asking those questions. Because I'm tired. I done had enough. I done seen enough to know what my culture is. I done seen enough to know what resonates with me. And I'm going to say it. We should never integrate it. Because now when we look outside our community, we got everybody race, everybody culture around us in our community but ours. You know what they associate with our culture? Drugs, gangs, violence. But when you look at other cultures where they got schools, they got these higher educations, they have the great medicines and great communication. Wake up, my people. Like, really wake up and start looking outside. If you really want to get here, go outside. Just look at your neighborhood. Like, go outside and just look at your neighborhood. Everything is there but your culture. Everything is there but your culture. The only thing that's there is you. That's it. You trying to tell me y'all don't even be trying to find out a little bit about your culture? Y'all don't be trying. Y'all just get up, go outside, and just go on about your business. We should never integrate it with them.
Even though I do agree with what this young sister has said, because I'm a student of history, I'm going to tell you what really, happened and how the ball was dropped. In the civil rights movement, they was putting foot to butt, okay? And to the point where they had to give the Civil Rights Bill, and even after Dr. King died, the Fair Housing Act, because the brothers and sisters was turning up in the streets. It was mass uprisings all over this country. Brothers and sisters say, hey, I have no reason not to fight because I'm going to die anyway, so I might as well go ahead on and fight. I'm not going to go out here like no coward. Now, when black people got a lot of gains in the civil rights movement, because they did, I know a lot of times, when we look back, sometimes we talk down on it, but if you really get down to studying the history and what our people was going through, we're not dealing with nothing compared to what those brothers and sisters dealt with and why they had to get out there and fight for freedom and fight for some sort of justice. Now, of course, in hindsight, we could look back and say they shouldn't have did this, they shouldn't have did that. We all can do that, right? And they're going to be people 20 and 30 years later go look back at our time and say they shouldn't have did this, they shouldn't have did that. But at the moment you felt that was right. The biggest issue that I've seen really comes from us. Because as I talked to my father one day about the time period that he grew up in where there was some segregation and black people they owned everything, like this sister said, he said in the 1970s, he said in the early 70s actually, black folk in that time period start abandoning the neighborhoods, abandoning the black businesses, abandoning the black food stores, and going over there and shop where the folks are at. And they kept doing that to the point where the brothers and sisters was going out of business. They didn't want to shop at the clothing store that was owned by a sister. Now they can go over here to Macy's. Or they can go to a place like Bloomingdale's in that time period, right? They abandoned everything. And then when everything went down, and everything went, of course, everything is cheaper in the black neighborhood. When they started allowing the foreigners to come in, the foreigners wanted to go in their neighborhoods, and they said, no, you can't go here. But listen, we'll even give you a grant to go over there into that black neighborhood and going on and open up your businesses over there. Because these people have gotten grants and loans by the U.S. government to go open up their businesses in the black neighborhoods. So this is why you'll see Indians with gasoline stations and Arabs, and you'll see a lot of Asian-owned businesses in the black community because the white community will not have them there. They won't have them. They may let a few of them come in every blue moon, but if they see too much of that, oh no, they got to go. They're not going to allow that. They never allowed any other group to really come in their neighborhood like that, talking about owning all the businesses. Them folks would never allow that.
I'm going to say this, and I don't care if you agree with me or not, but we should have never integrated. We shouldn't have listened to Martin with his dream. And a lot of people might not understand what I'm saying. I don't even care at this point. We should have never integrated with them. Before we even got to this point, we was thriving before that. We was thriving. Like literally, we understood the value in keeping our dollar within our community, investing into our own banks, schools, hospitals, food, clothes, all of that.
So to be honest with you, sister, much as I do agree that we should have just got our rights, stay within our own neighborhoods, work together, did everything we need to build, we just got comfortable. Our community got comfortable and we abandoned everything. And now we're suffering because of it, because we got too comfortable, right? Because you wanted in the 70s, you wanted to be just laying down with any old body. You were doing drugs and everything else that you was doing. And at the same time, these people were plotting to take you down. You had that 10 years in the 70s where you were just having a little bit of freedom, right? What happened in the 80s? The CIA and all of them brought in the cocaine to make crack cocaine. And the crack epidemic came in the 80s going up into the 90s. In that same time period, what else came in? AIDS. Now we know AIDS, the first person that had that was them folks, LGBT, in California, San Francisco, I think to be exact. And then later, of course, it spread down. That got to the black community, so that became an issue as well. So with the crack epidemic, AIDS, HIV, AIDS, then the crime bill in the 90s, of course, Joe Biden, your current president, had mass incarceration of black men. Y'all have to understand the 80s and the 90s was really hard on the black community. Because one thing the white supremacists will not do, he's the devil. He don't sleep. You may get a win and he may get an L. But you better believe he plotting against you. That's why you can't get too comfortable, because you in behind enemy lines. Even to this day, The reason why we are the way we are today is because we still too comfortable. Every blue moon, we kind of wake up. You know, you may have a time like that, like what happened with Rodney King and the LA uprising, or you may have what happened to Michael Brown, and you had the Ferguson uprising, or you may had, you know, what happened to George Floyd and that uprising, which kind of sparked, you know, the world in a lot of ways. But y'all don't keep that energy up where y'all holding these people accountable, being on code with each other. Y'all don't stick with it. You don't stick with it too long. And then folks know that because they study you. As long as you can go out there, buy you a pair of Jordans, get drunk on the weekend, if they can just give you some, you know how y'all like to smoke this, they making it legal for you now to have all that. A lot of brothers got locked up for that. And now they letting them say it's legal, and then they out here having dispensaries. We have to look at the part that we played and also white supremacy played at the same time. So, sister, how we got to where we at today versus back then, it's a whole lot of steps that you didn't cover to that. That's definitely true what you said, but I grew up in the 80s. I grew up in the 90s. I graduated high school toward the end of the 90s, right? And I got to see the remnants and the results of a lot of that stuff. I'm telling you, I lived through it. I seen the news reports. I seen people that had people I knew end up getting AIDS, right? People that became crackheads. People getting golfed, you know, when 12 was coming in and just arresting everybody. You know, even barely, you know, had a piece of crack in their pocket, they gone. You know, I'm telling you, it was something to see all that happening. Our community in America is really messed up. And no other community, when you look at these other communities, the other communities never been targeted with a drug. They haven't been targeted with mass incarceration. They haven't been targeted with a disease. They haven't been targeted. That's why when you look at these other communities and you say, oh, they thriving. Yeah, they can thrive because nobody bothers them. They may have some discrimination happen to them here and there, but they're not targeted for anything. So that's why I don't like black people looking at other groups of people that come into this country and say, oh, look how much they're doing better than us. We do great when we left alone. Trust me, that's our history. You leave us alone. Just leave us alone. Let us do our own thing somewhere else, and they just stay away from us. We thrive. It's been proven in our history all the time. But don't compare yourself to other groups because those other groups don't have your story. And I'm going to be honest, they couldn't deal with what we deal with because they'll be running back to their homeland.
And when we decided to integrate with these white folks and their culture and their way of living, their education, their medicine, their culture, their everything, now we having identity problems with ourselves because we don't even know what our culture is. And then when you do speak up, like people like me or other beings that speak up about our culture, you want to get mad and be like, that's not of our culture. What do you know? What do you really know?
But I get what Sister's saying, but just don't compare us to no other group. Just don't do that. Because we got way too much things that was against us to explain why we are the way we are today. But let me know what y'all think about, you know, what our sister is saying. I agree with 100%, but I tell people this, you could talk the way you talking, your sister, and you're going to have a lot of frustrating days because unfortunately, a good portion of black folks in America, they don't want to hear what you're talking about. They don't want to do for self. They don't want to build anything with black people. They don't. All they want is a job by them folks. Maybe if they can take a vacation here and there, and that's it. They want to retire and die. They don't want to do anything. That's why I always say we need to have the people that think like that young lady and the builders in the community get together and, you know, either you do something here or those people that's builders and the people like that young lady, let's, you know, find another country to go to, a black nation, and build there. Because I'm a firm believer of let's take the great people and build somewhere else. Because one thing about builders, we could build. That's what we do. We are builders. We can go anywhere and build. But as long as you're behind enemy lines like this, you always will have sabotage, either by white supremacy or our own people.